Hello friends. So today I'm going to talk about the next topic in carbohydrate metabolism, which is the HMP shunt pathway. Now the first question, what is the HMP shunt? The HMP shunt, it is an alternative metabolic pathway of glucose. Now we all know from our knowledge so far that glucose, it is normally metabolized by glycolysis. That is, glucose undergoes a series of reactions and ultimately it is broken down into two molecules of pyruvate. Now, this is the main pathway of glucose metabolism. But other than this, we also have another pathway of glucose metabolism, and this is the HMP shunt pathway. This is why it is called a shunt, because it is a different road or a separate road which is available for metabolism. The main road is glycolysis. This is like a side road. That is why it is called a shunt. What is the substrate for the HMP shunt? The substrate is glucose 6-phosphate. Now, if you remember the first reaction of glycolysis, glucose, it is converted to glucose 6-phosphate in the presence of the enzyme hexokinase. So this glucose 6-phosphate normally goes into the rest of the reactions of glycolysis, but also glucose 6-phosphate can be diverted into the HMP shunt pathway. So this is why the shunt is called the hexose monophosphate shunt. So glucose is a hexose and glucose 6-phosphate is a hexose containing one phosphate group. So it is called the hexose monophosphate shunt. We have other names also, the pentose phosphate pathway, because as you will see later on that this pathway is responsible for the synthesis of pentose phosphates, and also the phosphogluconate pathway, because phosphogluconate is also an intermediate of this pathway. So if any of these names are asked, ultimately we are asking the same question, that is about the HMP shunt. Around 10% of the glucose molecules enter this pathway per day. The liver and the RBCs metabolize around 30% of glucose by this pathway, and it is cytoplasmic. Now, what is the purpose of this pathway? Through this pathway, we synthesize many two substrates. Number one, NADPH, which is a reducing agent, and number two, pentoses, which are required for nucleotide synthesis. If you remember nucleic acids, that is deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid, these contain pentose sugars, and these sugars come from the HMP shunt pathway. So we have mainly two functions. Number one, it is a synthesis of NADPH, and number two, it is the synthesis of pentoses. Functions of NADPH. NADPH is a reducing agent. So you know that we have both NADPH and NADH, which can be used as a source of hydrogen in reduction reactions. So both NADPH and NADH have the same redox potential, but NADPH is used mainly in reductive biosynthesis, whereas NADH, it usually collects hydrogen for transfer to the electron transport chain. If you remember, like for the reactions in the TCA cycle, we have NADH as a coenzyme, and here the hydrogen is then transferred into the electron transport chain for synthesis of ATP. NADPH, on the other hand, it has no connection with the electron transport chain, but it is used as a coenzyme in the reduction reactions. So glucose, it has two ways it can go, either into glycolysis or into the HMP shunt. 90% of it goes into glycolysis and 10% goes into the HMP shunt pathway. The outcome of glycolysis is the production of pyruvate, whereas the outcome of the HMP shunt is the production of NADPH and pentoses. Now, where do we require NADPH? Why am I talking about NADPH now? It is because the HMP pathway, one of the purposes is synthesis of NADPH. So in those tissues or organs in where NADPH is required more, the HMP shunt pathway, it is more active. So what is the function of NADPH? It is a source of reducing equivalence during synthesis of fatty acid, cholesterol and steroid hormones, and also it helps in It acts as an antioxidant and it helps in detoxification of reactive oxygen species, regeneration of glutathione, and it helps to generate free radicals for the respiratory burst in macrophages. We will go into details of these functions later on, but just as an initial overview, so it is required as a source of reducing equivalents in the synthesis of cholesterol, fatty acid, and steroid hormones, and it has an antioxidant role. So where will the activity of the HMP shunt be more? It will be in these organs: liver, adipose tissue, adrenal cortex, lactating mammary gland, RBCs, and the cornea. Now, if you look into these sites more carefully, you will see that those first few, they are associated with more synthesis of cholesterol and fatty acids. So in these particular organs, there's high rate of synthesis of cholesterol and fatty acids, and for this we require NADPH. So the HMP shunt will be more active. Secondly, the RBCs in the cornea of the eye, these are the tissues which are exposed to high PO2. That is that they are more sensitive to oxidative stress. So in these tissues, the activity of the HMP shunt also will be more. Next, we will come to the reactions of the HMP shunt. Broadly, the reactions are divided into two stages. Stage 1, it is also called the oxidative phase. It is irreversible. Stage 2, it is also called the non-oxidative phase, and it is reversible. Now, it is very important to remember that stage 1 is irreversible and stage 2 is reversible. Why? We will go into it in detail when we are studying the reactions. Now, it is the stage 1 reactions which are responsible for the synthesis of NADPH and pentose phosphates, whereas in stage 2, we are synthesizing glycolytic intermediates. This is also important because, as we know, this is a shunt pathway. So what do we mean by a shunt pathway? A bypass reaction. So here we are starting from glycolysis, and also we are going to end in glycolysis. So the substrate here is glucose 6-phosphate, which is an intermediate of glycolysis. We start from, or we divert from glucose 6-phosphate. We undergo a series of reactions, and ultimately this has to be channeled back into glycolysis. So this happens in stage 2. So though the HMP shunt is more, we are concerned about the synthetic functions of NADPH and pentose phosphate, which occur in stage 1. Stage 2 is equally important because through this we channel the HMP shunt back into glycolysis. Now this is an overview of the reactions of the HMP pathway. I'm not going to talk about it in detail now. We will be going through the reactions one by one. Just note one thing here, that the substrate is glucose 6-phosphate. We have a series of oxidative reactions and non-oxidative reactions. But in the end, we are finishing with fructose 6-phosphate, which is an intermediate of glycolysis. So from fructose 6-phosphate, this can either be channelized into glycolysis or gluconeogenesis as and when required. Now, stage 1 or the oxidative phase. Substrate, it is glucose 6-phosphate, which is obtained from glycolysis. This is converted to ribulose 5-phosphate. 2 NADPH molecules are synthesized. Very, very important that this is irreversible, and it takes place in a two-step reaction. Now, reaction number 1, it is dehydrogenation of glucose 6-phosphate. So here, see in the diagram, glucose 6-phosphate, it is dehydrogenated and converted to 6-phosphogluconolactone. And the enzyme here is glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. It is associated with the synthesis of one molecule of NADPH. So here, glucose 6-phosphate is converted to 6-phosphogluconolactone. Enzyme is glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, which is commonly called G6PD. NADP is the acceptor of reducing equivalence here. And this is the regulatory step of the HMP shunt. Reaction number 2, it is the hydrolysis of 6-phosphogluconolactone, and here we get 6-phosphogluconate. The enzyme here is lactonase. But normally you will see in most of the books that both of these two reactions are represented as a single reaction, as we will see later. Next is the reaction number 3, which is formation of ribulose 5-phosphate. So here we have 6-phosphogluconate. It is being converted to ribulose 5-phosphate. So an important thing to note here is, here we have a hexose. Decarboxylation is taking place, leading to the synthesis of a pentose. And this is associated with the synthesis of the second molecule of NADPH. So the reaction here is an oxidative decarboxylation. The enzyme is 6-phosphogluconate dehydrogenase. Second NADPH is produced. This also is irreversible, and the irreversibility of this reaction enables the cell to maintain a cytoplasmic ratio of NADPH to NADP of around 100. Next, we have isomerization of ribulose 5-phosphate. So ribulose 5-phosphate, it is a pentose and it is a ketose. So ribulose, it contains a keto group, and it can be converted to the different pentose phosphates through various isomerization reactions. For example, epimerase, ketoisomerase, it can be converted into different pentoses according to the requirement of the cell. So ribulose 5-phosphate, it is interconverted to other pentose phosphates. Okay. So this is a summary of the oxidative phase. So we have glucose 6-phosphate. It is converted to 6-phosphogluconate in the presence of the enzyme glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. This is which I was saying earlier, that the first two reactions are generally represented as a single reaction. It is enough if you remember it in this way. 1 ADPH is being produced here. And the second reaction is conversion of 6-phosphogluconate to ribulose 5-phosphate. The enzyme here is 6-phosphogluconate dehydrogenase, and the second NADPH is being produced. So, glucose 6-phosphate in the presence of glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase is being converted to 6-phosphogluconate. Then another dehydrogenation reaction, it leads to the formation of ribulose 5-phosphate. After this, a series of isomerization reactions lead to the formation of other pentose phosphates. So this stage 1, or the oxidative phase, is associated with the form of 2 molecules of NADPH. Here is the first, and here the second NADPH is being produced. So next we are going to enter into stage 2. So stage 2 is the non-oxidative phase, and as we saw from the previous reaction, that the substrate for the non-oxidative phase will be the pentose phosphate, which was synthesized in the end of the oxidative phase. Now, this is a diagrammatic representation of the non-oxidative phase. Now, as we saw earlier, that pentose phosphates are converted into glycolytic intermediates. All these reactions are reversible and modifiable according to the cellular needs. Now, if you look at this diagram initially, you will get confused. So, don't look at it. This is just a diagrammatic representation of what is happening. Apparently, it will seem very confusing, but if we go through the reactions one by one and you understand them properly, you will see that these reactions are very easy. It is just like a series of permutations and combinations. So we'll be going through these reactions one by one. The important point to note here is that in the end, we are getting glycolytic intermediates. So as I said previously, that this is the pathway through which the HMP shunt is channeled back into glycolysis. And second, all these reactions are reversible and modifiable. This is a typical feature of the HMP shunt, or a unique feature, that the reactions are reversible and modifiable according to the cellular needs. Now coming to the reactions one by one. So this is reaction number 1. Xylulose 5-phosphate plus ribose 5-phosphate gives glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and stereoheptulose 7-phosphate. Now, don't look into the name of these compounds now. Just look at what is happening in the reaction. So, 2-carbon fragment is being transferred from a ketose donor to an aldose acceptor. So, this is the ketose donor and this is the aldose acceptor. Here, a 2-carbon fragment is being transferred. The enzyme here is transketolase. And TPP, which is thymine pyrophosphate, it is the carrier of the 2-carbon fragment. Now looking into this reaction again, we have a 5-carbon ketose which is reacting with another 5-carbon aldose. A 2-carbon fragment is being transferred from the ketose to the aldose. So what will be the outcome? This 5-carbon ketose will lose 2 carbons and be converted to a 3-carbon aldose, and this will gain 2 carbons and be converted to a 7-carbon ketose. So this is very simple. We have 5 carbons for first 5 carbons, so total we had 10 carbons. A 2 carbon is being transferred, so we have now a 3 carbon and a 7 carbon. Okay, this loses 2, this gains 2, and this is what happens. So the total number of carbons is still 10. Now look at what were the compounds which were being involved. At the end of the oxidative phase, we were left with pentoses. So here 2 pentoses are reacting, that is xylulose 5-phosphate and ribose 5-phosphate. 2-carbon fragment is being transferred, and what we get is glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and serioheptulose 7-phosphate. Now these products will be the substrates for the next reaction. So what is the next reaction? Reaction number 2. We have serioheptulose 7-phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate reacting. And here there will be a transfer of a 3-carbon segment. Now see here, 7-carbon ketose plus 3-carbon aldose, which were the outcomes of the reaction number 1. Here a transfer of a 3-carbon fragment is taking place. So the ketose loses 3 carbons. So what we get now is a 4-carbon aldose and a 6-carbon ketose. Now, if you remember, we were saying that the outcome of the non-oxidative pathway will be the formation of glycolike intermediates. So through the process of the HMP shunt, whenever we are regenerating a 6-carbon compound, it will re-enter the glycolytic pathway. Okay. So here, what are the substrates which are reacting? We had serioheptulose 7-phosphate combining with glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Now both of these were the outcomes of reaction number 1. 3-carbon fragment is being transferred, and we are getting erythrose 4-phosphate and fructose 6-phosphate. Now make a note here that fructose 6-phosphate leaves the HMP pathway here and re-enters the glycolytic pathway, and we are left with this erythrose 4-phosphate. Now in the next reaction, this erythrose 4-phosphate, it will combine with another 5-carbon, another pentose, which will be derived from HMP shunt directly from the oxidative phase. The reaction does not take place between these two, but this leaves the pathway here, and this will combine with another pentose sugar coming from the HMP oxidative pathway, oxidative phase. Now coming to reaction number 3. So if you see, what is participating in the reaction here is a 5-carbon compound and erythrose 4-phosphate, which was generated from reaction number 2. Now this 5-carbon fragment, that is xylulose 5-phosphate, is coming in directly from the oxidative part of the HMP pathway. So here we are combining a 5-carbon compound and a 4-carbon compound, giving a 3-carbon compound and a 6-carbon compound. So the reaction is a 5-carbon ketose combining with a 4-carbon aldose. The 2-carbon fragment is being transferred. So we are getting a 3-carbon aldose and a 6-carbon ketose. Now, as we saw in the previous slide, since the 6-carbon compound has been synthesized, it will leave the HMP shunt and it will enter into the glycolytic or gluconeogenic pathway. So here we have xylulose 5-phosphate combining with erythrose 4-phosphate. Xylulose, it loses 2 carbons, and we are getting glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and fructose 6-phosphate. Now, if simultaneously, if 2 of the same reactions are going on at the same time, fructose 6-phosphate will be leaving, and we will be left with 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. That is 2 molecules of 3-carbon compounds. So what happens in the next reaction is that these two molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, which were obtained from two sequential reactions, they will condense to form a molecule of fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. Now we know that fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, it is an intermediate of glycolysis. So fructose 1,6-bisphosphate can be channeled either into glycolysis or into gluconeogenesis according to the metabolic requirements of the cell. So if we look at the reaction here, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate with another glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, both of these are 3-carbon compounds. So we are getting fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. This is another representation of the reaction. We have fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, which can go into glycolysis, which in case of the next compound will be glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, or it can be diverted into gluconeogenesis by the enzyme bisphosphatase. So we are getting fructose 6-phosphate and then glucose 6-phosphate, which can be broken down into glucose. So this is a summary of all the reactions. Once you have gone through all of the reactions, I want you to go through this slide and see all the compounds, how they are reacting with each other. While revising this, please write it in practice, then only you will be able to remember the reactions properly. So here it is a representation of the two reactions taking place simultaneously. So first, what do we have? Two pentoses, which are coming from the oxidative phase of HMP shunt. The 2-carbon fragment is being transferred, giving a triose and with a heptose. Okay. So in the next reaction, these two are combining together. So we have a 7-carbon compound and a 3-carbon compound. So a 3-carbon fragment is transferred, and what we are getting is the 7-carbon compound loses 3 carbons, and what we are getting is a 4-carbon compound, another 6-carbon compound. There is 6 carbons plus 4 carbons. The total number of carbons is still the same, that is 10. Now what happens at this 6-carbon fragment, it leaves the HMP pathway. We are left behind with one 4-carbon fragment. This combines with another pentose, which comes in from the oxidative phase. So now total we are dealing with 9 carbons. Again, a transfer of 2-carbon fragment takes place. So the 5-carbon fragment loses 2, giving rise to a 3-carbon compound, and this gains 2, giving rise to a 6-carbon compound. So the 6-carbon fragment, it leaves the HMP pathway. Simultaneously, a same reaction will be going on at the same time, which is exactly the same. So at the end of this reaction, what are we left with? 2 6-carbon fragments which have left the HMP pathway. Another 2 6-carbon fragments are being produced in this reaction. These two are leaving the pathway. So ultimately, we are left with only 2 3-carbon fragments. Now these 2 3-carbon fragments combine and they give 1 6-carbon fragment. So by the sequential action of these two enzymes, in one cycle, 6 5-carbon sugars are converted into 5 6-carbon sugars. Now this is very, very important. If you see, carbon is neither gained nor lost. It is only a redistribution which is taking place. So initially we have 6 into 5, that is 30 carbons. Later on also we have 5 into 6, that is 30 carbon sugars. So if we look at this reaction once again, this is a very nice diagram showing how the transfers are taking place. So in the beginning, we are starting with 6 5-carbon compounds, that is 6 pentoses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And at the end of the series reactions, we are getting 5 6-carbon fragments. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And since these 6-carbon fragments have been regenerated, 6-carbon fragments, that is fructose 6-phosphate or fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, these are all intermediates of the glycolytic pathway and they are channeled into glycolysis or gluconeogenesis. What is the unique features of the HMP shunt? ATP is neither used nor generated in the shunt. It is a very common question which is asked in your exams. We are neither using ATP nor generating any ATP. So the purpose of this pathway is only the generation of NADPH and the generation of pentoses. Second point is that all the reactions of the non-oxidative phase are reversible. So this phase has no beginning and no end. We cannot say at any point that the HMP shunt has finished here. It is continuously going on, and depending on the metabolic requirements of the cell, the reactions can be diverted in either way. Regulation. There are two main regulatory enzymes of the HMP pathway. These are glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase and 6-phosphogluconate dehydrogenase, both of which were enzymes of the oxidative phase. So the main factor which controls the activity of these enzymes is the ratio of NADPH to NADP. So a high ratio inhibits these enzymes. The purpose of this pathway is production of NADPH. So if NADPH is sufficient, then HMP shunt is inhibited. Other than this, we have other factors also. So the pathway is stimulated by insulin, fed state, high blood glucose, and thyroxine. So as you can see, all of these deal with a high level of sugar. So if we have enough glucose, there is sufficient glucose for glycolysis, then some of the glucose is diverted into the HMP shunt pathway. Again, the opposite, it is inhibited by NADPH itself, starvation, diabetes, and a high ratio of NADPH to NADP. So glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase is competitively inhibited by NADPH. Both of the enzymes are induced by insulin. In a well-fed state, the concentration of the enzymes increases, and so the HMP pathway is stimulated, and in starvation, it is suppressed. As we already said, the HMP shunt can be modified according to the metabolic needs. For example, in the RBCs, the requirement of NADPH is much more. So the conversion of the pentose to the hexoses is favored. And once the hexoses are regenerated, they instead of going back into glycolysis can be pushed into another cycle of the HMP shunt. So if more and more of the hexoses enter into the HMP pathway, more of NADPH is generated. Whereas in case of cells where the demand of pentoses is more, since the phase 2 reactions are reversible, the hexoses are channeled back into pentoses. So we are seeing here that glucose 6-phosphate is the substrate of the oxidative pathway. It is leading to the formation of pentoses. And at the end of the phase 2, we have glycolytic intermediates. Now this fructose 1,6-bisphosphate can be hydrolyzed into fructose 6-phosphate by the enzyme bisphosphatase. And then fructose 6-phosphate can be converted into glucose 6-phosphate by phosphohexose isomerase. Now this glucose 6-phosphate, instead of going into glycolysis, re-enters the HMP pathway, leading to the formation of more and more of NADPH in case of RBCs. Whereas in case of cells where the demand of pentoses is more, since the second phase of reactions is reversible, these are reverted back into pentoses and more of pentoses are released. The significance of this pathway: generation of reducing equivalents, that is NADPH, which is required for the synthesis of cholesterol, fatty acids, steroids. How NADPH is required in these, you will be studying when you do fat metabolism. So as for now, don't memorize this, but when you study the metabolism of fatty acids, then keep this thing in mind that the NADPH comes from the HMP shunt. Correlate and study. Then you will be able to remember it. RBC membrane integrity. NADPH is required to keep glutathione in the reduced state, which detoxifies peroxides and free radicals in RBC. Now, RBCs, they have a unique situation. RBCs, since they carry oxygen, they are subject to a high amount of oxidative stress. Okay, so a large amount of hydrogen peroxide is produced in RBCs, and this hydrogen peroxide has to be detoxified. And this is done with the help of reduced glutathione. So if you see that glutathione, in the presence of the enzyme glutathione peroxidase, it detoxifies hydrogen peroxide, leading to the formation of water and oxidized glutathione. Now this oxidized glutathione has to be converted back into reduced glutathione so that further detoxification can take place. And this is done with the help of NADPH. Now, where does this NADPH come from? It comes from the HMP pathway. Now, you will be reading more about this reaction when you study the chapter on oxidative stress and oxidative stress markers. But as for now, this is just the overview of the reaction. and it makes you understand why the RBCs require more of NADPH. Prevention of methemoglobinemia, again in the RBCs, NADPH helps to keep ferrous iron of hemoglobin in the reduced state. It helps in maintaining corneal transparency due to its antioxidant action. Because the cornea, it is subject to a high amount of partial pressure of oxygen and oxidative stress. In the macrophages and phagocytes, NADPH is needed to produce superoxide radicals which have a bactericidal activity, and they help in the respiratory burst. Finally, pentoses, they are needed for DNA and RNA synthesis. Now, this is just an overview of the functions of pentoses and NADPH. So when you study the individual chapters, you will be going into it more into detail. Okay, so correlate and match that why this is required from the HMP pathway. NADPH and RBCs. The RBCs and the intracellular proteins are much more prone to oxidative damage. Now, RBCs contain hemoglobin, and hemoglobin carries oxygen. So, RBCs are subject to much more of oxidative stress. RBCs have another problem. Since the lifespan of the RBCs is only 120 days, the damaged proteins cannot be replaced. So, the only way to protect the RBCs from this damage is to detoxify the hydrogen peroxide. So, it is protected by glutathione, as we saw in the previous reaction. So the requirement of NADPH is much more in the RBCs. Finally, we come to the disorders associated with the HMP shunt. First is glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. Now this causes a hemolytic anemia. Now we saw in the previous slide that how the requirement of NADPH is much more in the RBCs. Now what happens if glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase is deficient? The supply of NADPH will be insufficient. Now, NADPH protects the cell from oxidative damage. Now, what will happen that in case NADPH is insufficient, the membrane damage will be much more and RBCs will be subject to lysis. Now, this is what is hemolytic anemia. It is an anemia which is due to the early lysis of the RBCs. Normally, the RBCs survive for around 120 days. But if the RBCs are broken down much earlier, then it will cause a hemolytic anemia. And this is what happens in G6PD deficiency. It is an X-linked disease and the individuals lack the supply of NADPH. Now, if we look into the pathogenesis, G6PD is deficient. It leads to an insufficient production of NADPH. So, the reduced glutathione in RBCs cannot be regenerated. What will happen? As a result, the RBCs will be subject to more of oxidative stress. The free radicals and peroxides, the oxidize hemoglobin to methemoglobin and peroxidize the RBC membrane lipids. It leads to the increased fragility of the RBC membranes and it will lead to early hemolysis. And if there is early hemolysis, it will cause hemolytic anemia in the individuals. Now, the people who have G6PD deficiency, they are not always symptomatic. How symptomatic they are, that depends on the level of the enzyme which is present. If there is only a mild deficiency, then the patient will present with only a mild amount of anemia. How much anemia it is there depends on the extent of the deficiency which is there. Anemia can often be precipitated by an oxidative insult which might be caused by sulfonamides or primaquine, aspirin, or ingestion of fava beans. So these are certain stimulating factors which might cause an acute oxidative attack and lead to sudden hemolysis and sudden fall of hemoglobin levels. This condition can be diagnosed by analyzing the G6PD levels in the blood. It is more common found in tropical Africa, Middle East, and Southeast Asia. Finally, coming to the Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. This is a syndrome which is due to the deficiency of thiamine in chronic alcoholics. Now, the depletion of thiamine, it is caused due to decreased intestinal absorption and an increased consumption by alcohol dehydrogenase. TPP is required as a coenzyme for transketolase. In the absence of thymine, the function of transcateolase is impaired. Hence, the functioning of the HMP pathway is also impaired. Now, this is the end of the HMP pathway. Thank you very much. And if you have any doubts, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.